Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Dan Goldman. My buddy, Dan Goldman, is a narrative designer and visual storyteller working in comics, television, interactive media, and video games. Creator of the Eisner-nominated Shooting War webcomic. He also covered an entire presidential election in comics form in real time with 08. You kind of got lucky, right? That it wasn't like 12 or 16. Yeah, it would have been rough. It would have been rough. Yeah, that book would have looked very not like the other one. Told psychedelic tropical ghost stories in red light properties and created an Indian feminist icon to stand up for victims of violence against women with Priya Shakti. He's also produced Emmy-winning experiences for AMC Television, written 2 video games based on The Walking Dead, and episodes of the animated series for television. Dan currently serves as narrative lead at Kinjin Story Lab, where he incubates story-based projects at the intersection of technological innovation and social good. He lives in Los Angeles with his partner and 2 cats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dan Goldman.
Come around this way. Thanks everybody for coming. I didn't want to do a huge presentation. I thought I would talk for like 15 minutes about kind of background material for the book, give you a little extra sort of behind the scenes stuff, and then I thought maybe we could just do we could talk and just do Q&A. And, you can ask me whatever you like. The book you're about to learn about is called Chasing Echoes. It comes out today, and I'm really excited about that. This is a wow. So the book is it's probably the most personal thing that I've ever written, or that's ever been published, rather. And it's loosely based on a trip that I took with my family about 3 years ago, and I'll tell you about that in a second as well. But it's out today. This is my local indie bookstore, and I'm really pleased to be here, and that the launch night was here in my hood, and that you guys came out, and all those nice things. So about the book. So Chasing Echoes, it really starts with. Oh, that didn't happen. So there we go. So the book starts with this guy. That's my grandfather, my Zaidi. His name is Shalom, and he had a really interesting life, but his childhood and adolescence was really swallowed up by the Holocaust. He fought in the underground resistance in Poland. He was in the Polish army. He was in 4 different camps before he was liberated, and met my grandmother in the last one. And he would tell us stories, and that's sort of how the book starts. He would sit down the grandkids and tell stories about the war that were really not age appropriate. Most of them were horrific and gruesome, and it was important to him that we knew what had happened, and we never took for granted the way that we lived or our status as Americans and how we were allowed to pass. And he would tell us all the time, you live here, but this can change at any moment. And no matter what, first and foremost, you're a Jew, and if you forget that, someone's going to remind you of it. And it sounds really dark and really crazy, except that we're having this conversation now in 2019, and it feels like more pressing than ever. I joked when the president got elected this time around that we were back on the minority list again. So it was kind of funny. We got status change. Anyway, so my Zaidi would sit and tell us stories, and he'd wag his finger at us and talk about how he would tell stories about his life before in the old country, and it always seemed like an abstraction. And so we had said to him, all the cousins individually, and my parents and my aunts had never seen it, never seen this place. He talked about this flour mill that he grew up on. And we were bothering him for a long time, like, let's go see it. Like, the war is decades away, decades past. Like, we want to go there. We want to reconnect with this root that you cut off, or that the world cut off. And so we made plans to do this about 30 years ago. We bought tickets and we did all the hotel reservations. And then he had a heart attack, and then he had another heart attack, and then he was gone. And when he went, nobody knew where it was anymore. Like, we lost our thread to our history. And then, life happened from there. And, a couple decades went by. And then I think it was something that was important to all of us, and we just didn't really have that conversation together for a long time. And then 30 years later, that trip finally happened. The way that trip happened was that my stepmother is an Elton John nut. And Elton John was playing a concert in Oswem, Poland, which is, the German name is Auschwitz, and that's where the camp was. And it just seemed too weird. So when my dad and stepmom were FaceTiming me about, we're going to go to Poland and see Elton John, and my dad said, well, we're going to go try to find the mill, the flour mill that belonged to our Zadie. Everything just kind of went white for a second, and I was like, I want to do this. I'm in. How do I do this? And word spread around the family, and the next thing we knew, a couple months later, we were all in Poland or en route to Poland, and it just happened in like a really beautiful way. So I took this photo of that gate on the most beautiful, idyllic day. When you come through the museum entrance and you pay your ticket and you come out and you see that gate, I don't think I've ever felt sicker in my life looking up at that. And then at the same time, the birds were chirping and the sun was shining. The air smelled delicious, not like barbecue, but like flowers. And it was really crazy. The energy of the place. We went to the camp and we did a whole tour. And part of the trip was that we didn't really know if we were going to be able to find the mill. It was more of a question, and we had documents and we had some research materials, but we really didn't have a lot. And so it became kind of like a treasure hunt for our history, and that seemed like a really good story. We did find the mill. That's my actual family. I didn't put them in the book because they'd never speak to me again. But so and I'll talk about that in a second too. But we did find the mill. That's the actual mill, and then we found a lot else too. Like here on the left is a building. It was one of 3 buildings that my great-grandfather built that is now like the Polish equivalent of Section 8 housing, and the holes are where somebody had ripped off the mezuzahs from the doorways, and then across the street there were swastikas, painted all over, and that was more recent. It was obviously they didn't have, I don't think they had aerosol cans during the war, but the sense as we traveled around the country was that those feelings about my people, literally my people, were still very much there and hadn't really traveled very far. And so I got home. Really, I was flying home, and the trip started to connect in my head into more of a narrative or more of a story, and it felt like something that wasn't just for me and my family, but was something that a lot of people would see themselves in with their own family and their own roots. And a lot of families have histories that are broken by war, and this I think it just seemed like it would touch a lot of people. So I started to do this. This was a version of the story that I titled Bringing the Blood Home, and I was going to do for a site called The Nib. And I was very excited to work with them because they're cool and they're smart people, but they wanted the story to... I had turned in a script that was 50 pages, and they wanted to do 30 pages, and it was just like, I was like, I can't do all of the things I want to do with this little real estate. And I walked away from it. But in this version of the story, it's really, I'm the main character, and I think that by the time I got through the whole script, I was kind of bored of myself. And so I knew that whatever direction I wanted to go in, I wanted to not keep the camera as focused on me. I did sit down and write a one-page treatment of the thing, which I've never done before, and I actually sold the book to the publisher on a single-page treatment, which was fun. And let me see. Oh yeah, and then I had to do this. So I shot this photo about a month after I got back from Poland, and had this kind of like experience revisiting, white nationalists in Eastern Europe. And then I was in my hotel room at Comic-Con, and it was during the Republican National Convention in 2016, and he was giving this speech that was like full Hitler. And I just remember taking this photo because it was like, this felt like history to me. And I didn't know if I was rubbed raw and oversensitive because of what I had just experienced, or if my like Judar was going off for real. And it turned out that I was right. So as I said, I didn't want to hurt my family's feelings doing the book about them and getting, because the last time that happened, they didn't speak to me for a long time. So, word to the wise. So what I did do is I created a different family. I created a family called the Blooms. I built their family tree, and I had little, character bios for everybody, and figured out how they all fit together in such a way that, I would still have my own family when the book came out. So I worked with a friend of mine that I know from the comics community in Brazil. I lived in São Paulo for a couple of years, and George Schall he wound up drawing this book, and we've been flirting with each other to collaborate on a project for like 7 years, and it just happened to be this was the right thing at the right time for both of us. And so these are his layouts. I didn't know how inside baseball you guys wanted me to get with comics, but this is most of the book, just done in tiny, tiny little thumbnails. So you can see how, before he really drew anything, he laid out the entire book this way. And George, it had been a little bit since we talked about working together, and over that time he had done a bunch more work and gotten like amazing. And so when he sent over these samples, this was a project he wanted to draw that died, but this was on the left. Billy Pilgrim is from Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, which I really would love to see a comic adaptation of, but his version, for whatever reason, didn't happen. But he did a couple pages of like World War II scenery with this, and I was like, oh, you're the guy. This is really going to be amazing. But he can do anything. He's wonderful, and I think we're going to do a lot of stuff together. So we started working. We sold the book to Humanoids, who is the publisher now. And I was very excited about that because I was reading Humanoids books, as probably when I was too young to be reading them, because some of them are kind of sexy, but I was into that, and like sci-fi sexy. And so to be part of that roster was a really, really big deal. It was an honor for me. And they had just launched about a year before we signed with them a literary real life stories imprint called Life Drawn, and so we're on that. And then George and I got to work. So he had laid out the book, we had designed characters, and I just put a bunch, because we did 1 million covers, and it's kind of like a running joke in our house, like, how many dozens of covers we had to draw before something got accepted. I wanted to show you some of those because I think some of them are really cool. I really like this one. This one I thought was going to be it when we turned it in, and then somebody at the publisher said that it looked like it should be hanging in a doctor's office or a hospital. So that didn't fly, but I'm into this one still. And then we went back to the drawing board. So this is George's process, and we would get on, I don't remember, like WhatsApp, or I think it was WhatsApp, and we would talk through and shoot each other sketches back and forth for George and I were talking, I would say like an hour and a half every day for most of this year. And one of these designs became this, which is a little closer. I really love this drawing. And then that became this, which was even closer. And then I thought, if you can see the, oops, shit. I just blew that, sorry. So what we did was we turned the camera so that the mill was the focus of everything, and that way it, I don't know, just felt more inviting. And so that became the final cover very quickly after months and months and months of talking about it. So that's really all I wanted to talk about. I wanted to really interact with you guys. So the book itself, my little tagline that I invented the night before it went to press, so I put it on the cover, is that it's a graphic novel about generations of survivors surviving each other, which I thought was like kind of jokey Jewish enough to attract people. But yeah, that's it. And I would love for everybody to, obviously ask me questions, and we're happy to talk about it. But I'd also just like to hear what you think about the book once you've read it, because that's what it's for. And again, like this is literally the first event I'm doing. The book is out today, and like, yay, awesome! I'm so happy to be here, and thank you. So yeah, what you got?
I have a question about the family. You don't want to use your name.
Yeah.
But there's characteristics in there that if they do read it, they'll be able to like say, yeah, that's me.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Are they still going to get mad?
They've all read it now.
Okay.
So I got vetted.
Okay.
And we were in, a couple months ago, we met my dad in Vegas, and he was like really, I think he was the most nervous. And he made a big show about like, just send me the PDF. And he read it on his phone, where he was like pinching in and out of every panel. And he went through 150 pages on his phone. And then like, it took him a couple days, and then we were at a restaurant, and he was like, I just want you to know, I'm very proud of you. And and of course I just immediately peed. So, but it was no, it was good. And I was worried, and he was very like I would see him reading across the room, and he was very serious and very scary. And I was like, oh my God, he's not going to talk to me for a year again. But it all worked out really nicely. And yeah, everybody and the people that I was the most nervous about, I changed the most, and kind of wrote away from. And there was little. There are some things in there, but I'm not going to talk about them on a podcast. But yeah.
Grandfather is your dad. Was your dad's dad?
My dad's dad, yeah.
And were you able to include a bunch of stories that your grandfather had told?
Oh yeah. The narrative of the book moves in and out of time. What's interesting though is like there have been a lot of graphic novels about the subject, but I think that this book has a very it's very much from a third generation remove, and very third generation American, and so it's not so much. There are scenes that are with my grandfather during the war, but it's not the focus of the book as much as it's about the reverberations of that, and like how it moved through the family and changed and or defined us, and maybe broke us apart too. That's a good question, but it does jump around. There are scenes in the 80s, there's scenes in the wartime, there's scenes from my aunt and dad's childhood too.
I don't know how much detail you have in the book about, like for instance, I'm curious how old your grandfather was when he was in the camp.
He before he was in a camp, he actually signed up when the Germans came in. He was 17. And he had just left to join the Polish army. So he went off to fight and defend his land at the age of 17, and while he was away, the Nazis moved in, and everybody was gone when he got back. And that's in the book. There's all these stories. Something else that happened, nobody asked this question yet, but something else that happened to me while I was writing it was I'm not a very religious person. Like I'm what they call a lousy Jew. I'm not good at the religion. It hasn't been a big part of my life. And there were points when I was writing this script where I started to like hear melodies of prayers while I was writing about them, and I have like pieces of prayers in the book, and it was deeper into the religion than I ever thought. It's not that deep, honestly, but it was still way deeper than I expected I was going to go. But what happened was that while I was writing it and while I was hearing this stuff like started coming out of me, and the next thing I know, I'm like writing scenes and I'm like sobbing at the keyboard. Wow. But yeah, and I found myself crying my eyes out, like 2 or 3 different times during the writing of the book, and that really surprised me because I felt like I had put all that stuff to bed, and apparently not. And since I got it out of me and now it's in the world, I've found other people that have had experiences like this that have been kind of floating through my life, and I'm having these kind of conversations. And like, I'm not necessarily going to be observant of any religion, but it was just really interesting to connect with people on that level where I think I had just closed the door and locked it from the inside. And I feel like, it's open now, and that actually feels really good. Any other questions?
You write about your real life and you went on a real trip, but drama requires consolidation. Were there any giant inventions you had to make the story work?
Yeah. And I don't want to spoil everything, but what's interesting about the trip is there's a huge chunk of the trip that isn't in the book because it didn't fit. It's not that story. But the Elton John concert is in the book. And I really like the way I handled that sequence with the lyrics and everything. It's funny. But there's a chunk of the trip where we were in Hungary, and it was my stepmom. I'm so happy that you asked because I wanted to bring this up. So my stepmom's mother was a Hungarian survivor, and so in Hungary the Nazis arrived only a year before the end of the war. So they didn't get it as bad as like the Polish who were under the Germans for 4 years, and they just has a different level of suffering. So my stepmother's mom passed away a couple years ago, but right before she died, she dictated a letter, and she said that she never wanted to go back to Hungary, but she said if you ever do, I would like you to deliver this letter to the head of my town, because her town, which was called Nirmada, and they sold out their Jewish neighbors. Like the Nazis came and they're like, oh, it's them and them and them, and it was like boom, and they were just all sent to Auschwitz. And so from the grave, my stepmother's mother had like this moment of justice, and we met with the town elder in the town hall, and they had like this very fine Hungarian chef that they were honoring us because we were coming back, and they were making a big show about how open-hearted and understanding they were, and then Bonnie like takes out this letter and unfolds it, and it was like boom, this incredible bomb from beyond the grave. And that was an incredible moment, but it didn't fit in this story because it wasn't about that. So as far as omissions, yeah, there were a bunch of things. There were things that were like a little too personal or too on the nose, and then there were other things that just thematically didn't fit. They didn't make sense. I was going to say something. What's that?
Inventions.
Oh, inventions? Yeah, I invented a lot. I did. I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, I really, it was like taking the itinerary of the trip and editing that, and then inventing this family and those characters to send along the itinerary. So that was harder than I thought. It actually ate up about a month of my time before I even started scripting. It was just about developing the Blooms as characters, and that part was that was a lot more work than I expected. Yeah, I can't think of like so I guess my invention was really more about the characters than about the plot, because the itinerary existed. So yeah. So.
Do you go into, it's funny because I remember when you came back with Friends with Dan and you told me a little bit about the trip.
Yeah.
Do you go into the climate that your family felt?
Yeah. Because I had.
You told me a few scripts about that.
Yeah. There was that's in there.
Okay.
And there was also this conference. Oh, so I think like let me answer that, and then I'll get into something else. So definitely, there was a confrontation that I had with the descendant of the Nazi sympathizer family in my grandfather's town, who sold my family out to the Germans. Like I met him. And we met through like iron bars of his house, and it was really I was like shaking after, and I gave that experience to the main character of the book, who is sort of based on my cousin, And there were a lot of those kind of things where it was like I knew, and I talked to everybody on the trip because there were parts we were together and parts we were separate. So it was like I just got to cherry pick and kind of like give the best moments to the characters that made sense with those moments. And so, I showed before there was art where I was the main character of the book, and now the main character is Malka, who is based on one of my cousins, and I was thinking about the story and who, like, boiling it down to make it drama. Like I wanted to have a clear protagonist, and I wanted to have somebody that was in her way the whole time, and my cousin was going through like some really heavy like post-divorce life shit, and and then she dropped everything that she had like tenuous control over in her life to come and be on this trip, and I felt like it made her an incredibly interesting viewpoint character, and then everyone else judging her, and very specifically like the character based on my dad being the most awful, and I think that that relationship is really what the book is about, and then the rest of the family is just sort of like viewpoints. And it was interesting too, talking about viewpoints, having a bus full of people with like different definitions of themselves as like, what does it mean to be Jewish? What does it mean to be this thing I call myself? And the different interpretations or interpolations of what that is. I have like one cousin who moved to Israel to be more holy, and everything that happened to her, and then you have like the Jewish atheists, and then you have the people that practice and are very judgmental about that and keep kosher, and there were a lot of different voices and a lot of different viewpoints about what it means to be one of us, and it was cool to put them all on one bus and let them argue for 2 weeks as they drove around Poland in search of the same thing. It just seemed like when I finally got on the plane and the trip was over, it was all like the movie was already in my head, and I just had to start making notes, and then the book happened eventually. There were 11 total. Yeah, and then we had a driver who didn't speak English and was drunk most of the time. And then at one point we had a fixer to help us because nobody spoke Polish. So we had a fixer near the end when we were like, okay, if we don't find the mill in the next 48 hours, like this whole thing's hosed and we're just going to go to a hotel and relax. And like this is it. It's either now or never. And then with her help we found it. It was cool. And that, those details of the trip are in the book, just in a invented, heightened, wackier way. So yeah.
Were other members of your party similarly affected at the gates of Auschwitz?
Yeah, everybody got really physically sick, and it was really hard to even talk when the time you come out of it. It was just. And it's awful too because you get to the gate. I had never been, and I mean to be perfectly honest, I never wanted to go, and I'm glad I made myself, but I didn't ever want to physically be there because I knew it was going to be horrible, and I don't know, and you get through the gate, and all of a sudden the walkway gets really narrow, and I just remember turning to Lily and being like, they're really going to make us walk single file through this thing, like that is. Like, how is that? No one thought about that. That's terrible. And so you walk single file through the whole museum, the whole experience through the camp, and you really, like, the feeling of being on a death march is not lost on you. But we all got sick and felt sick. And when you leave Auschwitz, you actually go to Birkenau, which is the Auschwitz 2.0 that they built after to murder more people. And when that was done, I think nobody could talk. It was the only time on the trip that we weren't eating. Like when nobody had any appetite. We're just like, no, nobody. Anybody want lunch? No, nobody wants lunch. Nobody wants lunch. Stop talking about food. And we're quiet. We went back to the hotel. Eventually, we were able to drink, and then we got really drunk, and then we went to see Elton John in the rain, and and drank even more. And it was really the only way to make sense of that was just like being together and like passing the point where it was just ridiculous, and you had to just laugh and eventually try not to throw up on each other, and just be outside and in this other moment. And it was the highs and the lows of that day. It was one of the wildest days of my life. Yeah, it was. I mean, I recommend the experience if you can get it, but it was not easy. Yeah. That was kind of a downer. Anybody have a question about, I don't know, the art or something? I'm happy to talk about that. I do usually draw. I've drawn a bunch of comics and graphic novels, and this one I did not, and that was delicious, as I got to work on all kinds of other things while George was working for 6 or 9 months on the book itself. That was great, and I think that I think we're going to do a lot more stuff together. He's really cool to work with.
Did you allow your family to give you notes on their characters inspired by this?
No, I talked to them about it beforehand. I asked if there were any places I was allowed to. I was forbidden to go. I don't think that half of them I don't think understood what was happening. And so I know where what point is too far. And I think that the most ridiculous character in the book is based on me, and I'm fine. I can take those punches, so I'm cool with that. But I think that's healthy. But I was very careful not to hurt anybody, and that's no good. But the character, my cousin, who is the basis for Malka, I had a 2-hour conversation with her once I had figured out that I thought she was the main character of the book. I wanted her to give me carte blanche, and she did. She was super cool about it. She was just excited to get the starring role, if you will, in the story, and she thought it was awesome. And she's so happy. She loves the book. But I did add stuff, and I think that there was a point where she was reading the book when it came out, or when I sent it to her, and I think she was starting to get offended, and then stuff started happening that never happened, and she was like, oh, this is a character. Okay, cool. So I think it was the right insertions of fiction. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think that saved it. So that was good. Yeah.
Was anyone in your family specifically against you writing the book when they learned that it was about the family?
I think they were, but they didn't say so.
Okay.
So I could tell by how quickly my dad demanded the PDF before it came out, and I was like, just so you know, it's already off at the printer. There's nothing can be done now. But he was like, give me that. And so he was very, very interested in knowing. And I didn't want anybody to feel betrayed. I didn't want anybody to feel like I was getting in punches that I wasn't able to, or I didn't want to deliver in person. So I'm not that kind of person. So yeah.
Your family had already given you ground rules, and you followed them.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was just verifying.
He was just verifying, yeah. And he wanted to make sure. I think my stepmom hasn't read it yet, but she's not really a huge part of the book, so it's all right. You're gonna ask something?
Yeah. So I'm curious about as an artist and as someone who's creating a visual medium but not having control over the art, what's that relationship like? Were there any visuals where I need this exact vision,
Oh yeah.
or did he just have carte blanche to do whatever he wanted?
He had carte blanche, but we were really collaborative. So it was more. So I showed you the layouts, and there's another step after that that's a little more developed, but still pencil, even though it was all done digitally. And there were points where I would have my script open on this side of the screen, and then his layouts on this side, or the pencils on this side, and I'd go over them side by side, and I would say to him, this looks great, but you're not selling this moment hard enough. This moment here is really important. So there were, even the week that we went to press, I begged him to just redraw this one little thing and this one little thing, and he did, because he's lovely. And but George was amazingly cool about it, and really what we wanted was the best possible version of the book that we could produce with the amount of time we had, and I think we got close.
How different
The one sheet that I turned into humanoids, I was the main character, and when I turned in the the longer treatment, and all of a sudden it was about a different family, and like Malka was the main character, and everybody at the publisher was like, "Where's Dan? Like, I don't see him," and they thought they were getting an autobiographical book, and I threw them for a loop, but you know, it was the story I wanted to tell. It was the way I wanted to tell the story, and I said, this is what it's going to be. So, and they were giving me a hard time about it, and I was like, this is going to be the book. So either you're interested in it, or I'm going to take this version somewhere else. So they wanted it. George is Brazilian.
But his name's kind of
Not.
European.
Yeah.
Who's coming back?
Well, people from Brazil are from all over. So I mean, I don't know his exact lineage, but I mean, he's very European looking. He lives in Barcelona now too. So, but he had the name first. But yeah, George is, you know, he's born and raised in São Paulo, and he's just like, I can't say enough nice things about him. But as far as his like bloodline, I don't know about that. We never really had that conversation. I do know he's not Jewish, if that means anything to you. So he didn't have that level of connection to material, but he said that living in Barcelona and being around like old, you know, like different city planning and like, you know, city streets with town squares and things like he it was very much in his, it was around him already, and it made it easier for him to do the work, which was cool.
I want to ask you about, so you were saying that, because I know, you do your own art as well, and you felt more free when you're able to like collaborate with the illustrator. Could you go into a little bit more of that?
Yeah, you know what felt really free was my butt not being in the chair for 14 hours a day. That was amazing. Like free to get up and go have lunch or work on other projects or. Yeah, but I mean, you know, there's a point at which, you know, I think from beginning to end, I wrote the whole book in 3 months, and then he was drawing it for much longer. And I've been that guy, and I know how it is. And it was really nice not to be that person.
But you get a little bit more, like, it's almost like art directing to a certain extent. I feel like a lot of times, like, if you have like a studio visit with like a paint or something, you're able to like point something out that the artist has, because they've been working on it
Yeah.
for hours and hours. So maybe that helps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's really interesting because I can't imagine coming up with a narrative, the story,
Yeah.
and physically having to like draw it. So
It's hard. It's really hard. But you know, there's something. On the flip side of that, the nice part of doing everything yourself, which I have done like multiple times, is you don't even talk to. There's no consultation. There's no collaboration. It's just like you are making what you see, and that's it. And that's really pure, and that's really cool. And I think that they both have their pros and cons. Yeah. I liked being able to get up and walk out and have lunch and not be in front of the desk as much as I normally was. It was really good.
Did you find yourself being the writer you hate working with?
I really I was very aware of that, and I really tried not to be. And there were the points at which I had to beg for something. I was deeply respectful, and he never really gave me a hard time. I think that I was able also to serve as a buffer between myself and like the publisher in a way that was really helpful, I think, for him. So I probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but but that was good. I mean, it was important for us to be a team, and you know, I think we're a really good one. So yeah.
As you write the script, do you give a lot of direction towards what you want to see on the page?
Yeah, I really, I think that's important if it's not immediately clear. And then sometimes if I didn't give enough, I felt like sometimes the moment didn't land right emotionally. Like the characters are maybe giving not the right performance. And so I learned early, like the level of detail I had to put in for him, especially because English is not his first language either. And so it was, you know, we're writing about another culture that, you know, neither of us really knows backwards and forwards. And then on top of it, he's taking my direction in English. His English is excellent, but it's not his first language. So yeah, there were moments where we were splitting hairs over people's expressions or their body language. I'm like, this, you know, like I don't feel the level of humiliation or anger here that I want to, and I don't feel this is like happy, but it's not ecstatic, and then there were parts that were like a little too extra that I was like, tone this down a little bit, and this is supposed to feel more like, and then insert movie reference here, and he was like, okay, I got it. And so we did a lot of that back and forth, and since the artwork was all digital, it was easy for him to just kind of like, I mean, he drew on the whole book on an iPad, and he would just kind of zoom in and fix it and pop back out. So it was great. I mean, the working that way, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would have been a much longer process.
Was there any of that kind of relationship with the publisher? Was the first draft the final draft for them, or?
There was some editing at the end, but I think it was it was not so much on the page, it was in the text. So there was a little bit of that. But yeah.
I apologize if you already answered this earlier, but when you were thinking about how this story would be presented to people, did you think about it in terms of like visualizing a graphic novel, or did you visualize like just the words on the page? I'm just wondering like, the process behind like deciding to make it a graphic novel. Like, was that what popped into your head as the vision, or is that?
It was designed to be a graphic novel. Originally, like the version where I was the main character would be much more simple, kind of like a web comic, if that means anything to you. But I thought it would be on. I was going to design it for Instagram, so it would be like single squares, and there was just not enough room for me to tell the story I wanted to tell. And then so once it morphed from that idea into like pages of panels, and I could fit everything I wanted to fit. But I mean, I guess with comics is not the writing, and comics is not the art. It's the synthesis of the two, and like that's what's weird about it. So you're like the finished product is it's those two things overlaid that make it what it is. It's what makes it come alive, and that's the way I think about it. You guys are very quiet now. Anybody have any more questions? You want to see the books or something? Yeah? Okay, cool. Let's do that.
All right.
Awesome.
We get a round of
All right,
applause
thank
for
you.
Dan Goldman.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.